High above the ruins of the Third Reich, in the snow-choked spine of Europe, a legend was born. In the final months of World War II, with Nazi Germany collapsing under Allied advance and Soviet siege, an idea spread through intelligence networks and the minds of desperate men: the Alpine Redoubt, or mountain fortress. A plan so audacious, so desperate, it aimed to turn geography itself into salvation. It was imagined as a final Nazi sanctuary built deep within the Alps, where towering rock, winter storms, and narrow passes would replace a dwindling army. Intelligence officers feared it, journalists speculated about it, and for a moment, even seasoned generals treated it as if it might alter the final outcome of the war. By 1944, the Nazis were losing. The Luftwaffe had been strangled in the skies. Oil supplies were starved by Allied bombing of synthetic fuel plants. The Wehrmacht was splintered into retreat and surrender. Leadership had fractured into rivalries between party bureaucrats and SS warlords. Yet engineering ambition persisted on paper. German planners revisited mountain defense concepts that had circulated as far back as continental wars before Hitler ever marched. But this version was different. It combined military logic with ideological delusion. Retreat south, hold the mountain choke points, preserve leadership, move remaining industry underground, fortify every peak, and prepare for a war after the war. In bunkers carved into the mountains, secret factories would build jet parts, long-range rockets, ammunition, and fuel, out of sight from Allied recon, immune to strategic bombing, sustained by slave labor beyond the reach of liberation. On paper, it was terrifying. On the ground, it was chaos. To understand why the myth grew so quickly, consider the shape of the mountains. The mountain warfare had historically favored defenders. Tanks stalled. Aircraft lost some tactical dominance. Narrow roads became defensive traps. Supply chains were the artery of survival. Whoever held the peaks held the tempo. Commanders like Erwin Rommel had already demonstrated how rugged terrain could cripple bigger armies. The mountains made the redoubt logical enough to fear but impossible to centralize due to Germany's collapsing logistical core. The rumored fortress location gravitated toward Hitler's cultural obsession with mountain mythos, especially near Alpine estates like Berchtesgaden, Salzburg, and Tyrol. Goering fantasized about ruling from Bavaria. Himmler buried documents while searching for escape identities. Goebbels continued propaganda distribution from Berlin area bunkers, not Alpine capitals. In the mix of retreat, nearby regions like Bavaria became logistically relevant evacuation zones, adding physical fragments that amplified the myth's credibility from afar while collapsing upon inspection. Meanwhile, Allied intelligence, especially the OSS, escalated scrutiny. Lucius Clay, commanding U.S. occupation planning, prioritized mountain recon divisions simply because irrational dismissal would gamble war's final months on optimism. Recon pilots swept peaks photographing suspicious roads, ridges, airstrips, and tunnel entrances. They prepared for a final Nazi capital that never centralized but had to be accounted for. But the Germans could not unify the redoubt because command cohesion had already died elsewhere in concrete bunkers of Berlin, not Alpine bunkers. Coordination failure doomed the plan. Rail networks were shattered. Oil was gone. Industry relocation was fragmentary. Laborers were dying. Leadership was dissolving. Even elite mountain units meant for redoubt defense were instead surrendering locally, not entrenching centrally. One of the biggest intelligence misreads came from tunnels. Massive underground complexes did exist, fueling the myth, but not in the Alps. The most infamous was the Dora Mittelbau tunnel system, connected to slave labor rocket production, inventoried after 1945, inspiring the Alpine ghost factory rumors, even though it wasn't the Redoubt HQ. That complex was in Thuringia, proving how infrastructure horror could inspire fortress legend without becoming a functional regime continuation citadel. By April 1945, the 19th Army briefly used Austria's high ground, but that was retreat terrain resistance, not redoubt capital defense. Goering imagined councils in the Alps. Himmler investigated disappear routes, yet no mountain capital ever emerged. Hitler stayed in Berlin. Goebbels followed suit in suicide. Himmler was captured and died shortly later by cyanide. The supposed Redoubt commanders instead became fugitives or corpses before any Redoubt unification mattered. Then came the collapse of the myth. By May 1945, the war was over. The Germany surrenders sealed reality. There was no unified mountain fortress, no miracle factories hidden beneath Europe's peaks ready to fire new annihilations. No self-sustaining Nazi capital entrenched in rail-fed industrial Alpine tunnels, continuing war production. No armed treasure capital under a mountain door. No long-range rocket council launching exile war. Instead, there were scattered depots, tunnels, and soldiers waving white flags to Allied patrols. And yet, the legend endured, because legends thrive where documentation dies. The Alps still existed. The tunnels still exist today, fragmentary relics misattributed by rumor fog. Oceanic salt mines like Merkers held Nazi gold, but not Alpine command. The legend was logical enough to fear, but impossible enough to fail. This rumor shaped intelligence planning, late-war map paranoia, and psychological fear, layering for both sides. The life of the myth mattered more than the physical completeness of the plan. Psychological weapons don't need to fire. They only need to multiply uncertainty. The bitter irony remains. The Allies planned for a fortress that the Nazis could not plan effectively for. They feared a final mountain defender citadel that might outlast Germany's cities. What they found instead was engineering blueprints and surrendering officers yelling at the clouds while evacuation convoys clogged narrow Alpine roads. The mountain fortress never burned Europe into continued war isolation. It never produced rockets of annihilation from Alpine capitals. It never unified leadership fractured by internal treachery. Its power lived only in mythic coordination, not battlefield endurance. Tunnels near Thuringia inspired the myth. The Alps amplified it. But reality dismantled it. Thus, Mountain Fortress stands today as World War II's most logical mythic ghost base. Terrifying in terrain logic, impossible in 1945 coordination, and cinematic in narrative potential. The faces did the yelling, the mountains did the lighting, but the fortress never fired back.